So thank you to everyone for coming to this meeting today on the last day of Women's History Month. I'm going to introduce Vivian Burchell, who's going to introduce the rest of the panel. Vivian is, as you know, running for office. She wants to be the Democratic nominee for the 14th Middlesex District. When she's not busy running for office, she actually has a full-time job at Acton Television, where she runs a television show that brings people together from various community organizations. Vivian is all about building community, making sure that people in community know and understand one another, making sure that the people in leadership understand what the people in their community are saying, and that the people in the community have an opportunity for exposure to those leaders who have so much influence in the lives of our community. So Janice and I are on Vivian's campaign committee, and we had been wanting to run a women's event to celebrate Women's History Month here in Chelmsford, and we came upon this idea and thought, oh, this is perfect, because one of Vivian's core skills is navigating forums where people are introduced and community is built, and then asking great follow-up questions. So Vivian, I am going to turn it over to you and take it from there. For everyone else, if you have questions for anybody, please direct them in the chat to me personally, not to the whole room. That way our speakers are not distracted by chats coming in. And what I'll do is I will amalgamate, is that the word, the chats that come in. So if 3 people ask the same question, I'll make sure we only ask it once. There's a possibility we might not have time for the chat questions to be answered. And if we don't, I will send them to our speakers via email and then send them out to you via email so that you can join. You can get the information that you need. So I will turn it over to Vivian from here, and thank you so much, Vivian.
Thank you so much, Maura, and the whole team that has been behind this event. This is very timely, being Women's History Month, and with us today is a panel of eminent women leaders in the town of Chelmsford who are going to introduce themselves and tell us what they do, and you know how long they've lived in the town of Chelmsford. Of course, as someone who aspires to represent this town, it's an honor to just be in your presence and learn from you and hear from you. So I will begin with Pat Wargers. Please introduce yourself. And
thanks, Vivian, and thanks to you and Maura for setting this up. I'm sure this is going to be an interesting hour as we discuss what's going on. My name is Pat Wojcik. I am on the select board in town. I've been on the board about 13 years now. I got involved, I guess, because I've always been interested in politics and government. And finally, I took the leap. The early part of the 21st century, I ran for library trustee, and I served 1 term there. And then I decided I would go for the select board because I always knew who my board of selectmen was in town before we became the select board. We used to be the board of selectmen, and I felt like I could help run the town and contribute effectively to it. So that's where I am right now, and I'm sure we'll get into further discussions about what I do as a member of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Aileen?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eileen Deschaves. I am a lifelong resident here in Chelmsford. First of all, I'm a mom of 3 kids. I have 2 teenagers, so I'm exhausted, both in high school and then a 4th grader. And I have been, by trade, I'm a physical therapist. I worked for 20 years as a PT, 15 of them here in town at Sunny Acres Nursing Home. So I've given a lot to my community. For the past few years, in 2018, I opened a small business called the Artisans Exchange in Chelmsford Center, which unfortunately, due to COVID, thank you, Maura, has been a huge supporter. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we did have to close, but my brother and I reopened as Old Mill House Coffee in October 2020. So I'm there having coffee every day. And now I'm the sole owner of Old Mill House Coffee in Chelmsford Center. So yeah, townie, and I've done a lot of different things here in Chelmsford. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Eileen. Jen?
Hi, everybody. Jen Melanson. I just want to thank you, Vivian, for inviting me here. I'm very happy to participate. And you may not know that in addition to March being Women's History Month, it is also Social Worker Month, and I am a social worker. So I am the Community Services Coordinator for the town of Chelmsford. I've been in this position since the position was created in 2019. So I was the first person into this role and been here now for, we'll be rounding out my third year. And loving every moment. It's a wonderful community to work in, and really, a place where I can put my social work skills to use every single day. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Carly, and then Maria.
Yeah, thank you. First, I want to start by thanking all of you for pulling this together. I feel so honored to be part of this women's panel. So a little bit about myself. I have lived here in Chelmsford with my husband and our son for 25 years. I'm originally from New York. My career has been in high tech, in sales management. I've managed many, many teams in sales as well as global operations. I have a background in project management and pro-side change management. I have been in Chelmsford, as I said, for almost this year is 25 years. And I am a part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think, we have one more. Maria.
I've got it. All right. So Vivian, want to thank you again for the invitation and more. Maria Santos. I'm on the school committee in Chelmsford, and that was my first term, which ends this month. And I'm running again for a second term. I've been in the town well over 30 years. We moved in 1988. And I remember that because that's when I graduated from law school. And I've been an attorney practicing since that time. First, it was here in Chelmsford. My law office is now in Westford, Mass. And it's been there for a while. Immigration is the focus of my practice. I'm the mother of twins. They're both graduating this year from Chelmsford High School. And I don't know if I'm looking forward to September when they no longer will be home. I am going to be crying. So it's busy and we get tired during this time, but it's an immense pleasure to be a mother. And what else do I do? I'm a town rep, and I actually consider that a pretty important position because it looks at the entire town and what's happening in it. And that to me is really important. And why education? Because I simply love it. And I think it's one of the most
60 minutes.
important and crucial systems you can have in a community. Thank you.
Well, what a phenomenal team of panelists that we have. Thank you all for the introductions. I feel like I'm getting to know you even a little better. But one of the common denominator that I have heard through your introductions is community. In everything you do, you're centering community. So my first question to you all, what does leadership in the town of Chelmsford mean to you? And I will start again, my screen rearranged this time. I think Carly, you're first, and then I'll follow the next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, leadership to me means having people who are great communicators, people who have a vested interest in our community. They care about the people. They genuinely want to solve problems, and they can work collaboratively with others, whether they agree on all issues or not. To me, that is true leadership, being able to bring people together, solve problems, and make the community a stronger, a better place.
Thank you. Pat, Eileen, then Jen, please.
I think leadership in Chelmsford, it kind of depends on where you sit. Obviously, leadership to me is going to be different than leadership to Maria, who was on the school committee, and to Carly, who was on the diversity committee. I mean, I think it's transparency with the residents. I think it's being accessible to the residents. Often when I'm out, at a restaurant or shopping somewhere, or just walking around town, somebody will come up and ask me a question about the town or have some complaint. I mean, it's hardly ever a compliment, but every once in a while I do get a compliment. And I am an Air Force veteran, so every month I go to the Veterans Breakfast that they have at the Senior Center, and I can always count on leaving there with 4 or 5 questions that I have to follow up with the town manager to find out, how can we fix something for somebody? Or if we can't fix it, why can't we? And how can I explain that adequately to them? So I think there's that transparency, and there's the knowledge of the town, of how municipal government works. And I think it's critical that when somebody wants to run for the select board, that they have an idea of what it is they're getting into, because it isn't just a meeting every other week, as everybody on this panel knows. You have to be available for the questions, and you have to be able to, if you don't know an answer, you have to be able to know where to go to find an answer. So I guess it's it's the transparency, it's the knowledge, and it's the service to the residents of the community.
Thank you. Eileen and Jen.
And as Pat said, each of us have our own perspective on leadership and leadership in Chelmsford. And as a small business owner, or a micro business owner, as I refer to our Old Mill House Coffee, I have several different roles as a leader. One of them primarily that I'm really proud of, that has kind of come out of COVID, which if you can take a positive, which I need to take a positive out of it as a small business owner, is kind of trying to rally the troops in the Center Village. I was a member of the Center Village Master Plan Committee, Implementation Committee for a while, and trying to support the other small business owners, and kind of, it was really we're still rallying, we're still trying down there, but having the other small business owners and checking in on each other, I kind of became the voice for everybody, whether they wanted, help with Instagram, help with social media, help with parking issues, help with this. People would kind of come and find their way to me, find their way to email me, find their way to give me a call, text me and say, hey, Eileen, what do you think on this? Can you help us? Who do I contact? Different things like that. And we kind of created this little group of small business owners, which is really nice. It's becoming more of a community of small business owners rather than a competition between small business owners, which I think is really, really important right now. And Vivian and I talked about this the other day. It's the only way to lift each other up, is to have that community. And, I don't need to be the leader, but it just kind of happened. Maybe because I talk so much, I don't know. But it just kind of happened, and everybody, or maybe because we have good coffee, maybe that was it. When they would come, everybody would kind of come over and kind of air out their grievances, and we would try to come up with a plan. So for me, having that leadership role, just for, even if it's 4 or 5 small business owners, to try to help them along. So that to me is really important.
For me, leadership is kind of a funny thing for me, because I don't necessarily consider myself, I consider myself less of a leader and more of a person of service for the community. So it's funny, I think back to when I was interviewing for this position, and one of the first questions that Town Manager Paul Cohen asked me was, since you'll be the first person coming into this position, how can you envision how you would start this position and ways in which you would work with the community? What are some of the things that you would do? And I was very honest with him at that time, and I said, I can't possibly know now what it is that I need to do for this community until I get into the community and I actually speak with the people who live here and find out from them what it is that they're needing. So for me, leadership is a very humbling position because it's not about me telling people what they need. It's about them telling me what they need for me to do for them. And that involves being, Pat touched on a great point about being accessible to folks. And so although a portion of my responsibility in my role is in identifying gaps in services for folks and then developing and implementing program that will fill those gaps, a large portion of my role also involves sitting down one-on-one with individuals or families in this community and working directly with those folks. And I don't, even though I'm in a leadership position, I don't ever want to lose that ability to connect directly with people in the community and hear from them what it is that they need.
Thank you. Maria?
So being on the school committee, which is about one particular subject, I think it's important as a leader to try to be informed as much as possible about that subject, and not only on what's happening in our own community, but what's happening overall in terms of the subject matter of the committee. So I think leadership requires us to always be on top of what's going on in our subject matter. But more importantly, it's a committee. So how to work with that committee, how to work collaboratively, but at the same time, make sure that what I feel is important, the issues that I think are important to the people that I'm representing, are brought forth in the committee and are voiced without fear. And to really feel that you can be yourself and what you believe can come through in that committee setting is also very important. So I think remaining true to yourself and what you are as a person has to always be part of being a good leader in any setting, but especially in a committee that requires collaboration, I think is important. And another thing that many of you have said that I think is absolutely crucial is engaging with community, not just talking, but actually listening and getting information from the community on what they need, and at the same time then trying to provide whatever they do need. And Jen said it in many ways. It's part of also what we do, because we're elected to provide a particular service. And I always say to anybody in town who is interested in education, look, don't close me off. Make sure that you provide any input you can, because I really would like to know your input when I'm making a decision. I may not make it exactly as you would want, but I want to know what you need and what your input is. So I think actually engaging is part of that leadership role, and not closing yourself off just because you've been elected and there you are sitting. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for all your perspectives on, on leadership. There are certain themes that have been cross-cutting across, each of your input, and that includes centering people, and also, learning how to listen, building community. Eileen was talking about building businesses together. It's not competition. It is, it's community. And, Pat was talking about, the accessibility and being able to speak to people's needs. And all of you have really mentioned these themes one way or the other, which is fantastic for the community of Chelmsford. I'm so envious of them because they have women leaders who think alike in terms of the approach to providing service. So my next question to you is, what is the one thing that you wish someone had told you before you became a leader in your specific role? I'll start again with Carly. Hello? Oh, you're muted, Callie.
Muted, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
So in my role as a co-chair for the DEIC, it's a really good question. I think that I probably would have liked to have known more about the other groups and committees within the town and how to navigate those groups and committees. Because what we do with DEIC, we can't be successful without others. That's true of anything. You know, when you're trying to accomplish things, you need to collaborate. And with the DEIC, there are so many different teams, committees, people within the community that we need to reach, and we need to explain what we're trying to accomplish for the community and get that buy-in from them. And there are just so many people. I just wish when I joined the committee, I knew more about those groups of people, those committees, those elected members of the town, so that we hit the ground running. It takes a lot of time to develop this intelligence and create these relationships. We're a new committee, newly formed. We had to come up with our charter. We had to go back and make sure that it was in alignment with the vision of the select board and the town manager. And then we started thinking about what we could accomplish. And so we're doing a lot of things all at once. But if we had known more about the people, more about the history of Chelmsford, what's happened, and understood why things are the way that they are, we probably would have gained a little bit more traction. But we've made significant, we've had some significant accomplishments. So I'm not unhappy about what we've been able to do. I just wish I'd known more about the other committees and the other leaders in the community.
Thank you, Callie. Pat?
I guess if there's one thing I wish I could do better or had learned better would be how to be tactful and diplomatic when somebody isn't going to get what they want. You know, I tell people who are thinking of running for an office, if you try to make everybody happy, you'll make yourself miserable. And that's absolutely true, because there's so many diverse opinions and wants and needs across the town that there's not any way that you can make everybody happy. Because if that were the case, you know, some of us want to go back to 1950 and 60 when we had just 10,000 people in town, and you know, most of the land in town was pig farms and dairy farms, and that's not going to happen. So I guess it would be a way to let people down easily and still be relatively confident that you're still going to have their support, because I often find that if you don't vote the way somebody expects you to or wants you to in order to promote their ideas or their viewpoint, that you know, they could switch on you in a minute and say, well, I'm never voting for you again. And you just have to accept that. So I guess that's one thing that's difficult for me, and wish I had a better way to handle it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Pat. Eileen?
Thank you, Pat. I think you do a wonderful job with that, by the way. For me, there's so many things. I think maybe because of my background as being a physical therapist, I was trained to do, you know, in a box, and things were very like, you know, I was in healthcare. I was in healthcare for over 20 years. And then I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. So to be a small business owner, it's not as much as learning how to balance the spreadsheet or balance the books as I thought it was. You can learn any of that stuff very easily. It's more about learning the people, learning how you know, what is going to make your business grow? What is the different things in the community? I had no idea when I first started, back when we were Artists Exchange, even how much of those things were going to matter, how much of your, you know, just being there with a smile on your face every single day mattered. You know, you can make mistakes with taxes. Well, you can't, but you know, little things like that with your books or with little things, but you can learn all that. That stuff is all learned. You can fix it. But the message that your business gives off is so huge, and to be a part of a community, to do special events like we do, that's those type of things are what I wish I had known, so I could have, you know, maybe started some of that stuff sooner, do it a little better. But you know, we're learning. I'm learning.
Oh, thank you so much, Eileen. You've made a difference, at least in my life. We've shared that
Thank
story.
you.
So.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, you do. Jen, and then Maria.
Yeah, for me, what I wish I had known coming into this was how difficult it would be to be able to give people the information that they want all of the time. So let me explain what I mean by that. As a social worker, I'm bound by ethical principles, and first and foremost, I'm bound by confidentiality. So when I'm working with folks in the community, the work that I do with them, unless I have, you know, permission from them to share the work that we do with someone else for a specified reason, I can't talk to other people about what I'm doing. So I often get calls to my office from residents who are concerned about maybe another resident, that it could be a neighbor of theirs that they have concerns about, or certainly I've had quite a lot of calls from folks who are concerned about our homeless population in Chelmsford. And I can't tell them much when they call. And that's really, really hard, because I would say 98% of the time people are calling out of genuine concern. And what they're wanting is to help their neighbor, help the unhoused individuals in town. And so I can't even confirm for them whether or not I've had contact with the person that they're calling about. Oftentimes, particularly when we're talking about our unhoused population, I have had contact with them, and I have been, you know, working with them in some capacity. But I can't tell people, you know, everybody is entitled to privacy and respect and confidentiality. And I take that very, very seriously. And so I try to explain that to folks when they call me. And it's really particularly hard when it's, you know, say a neighbor calling about concern with another neighbor. And then I, you know, whatever contact I make and whatever work gets done, I really, without that person's permission, I can't follow up with the person who made the initial call and tell them, like, this is what happened and this is the result. And I think it you know, there's two things that happens. It leaves folks feeling a little bit unsatisfied, because I think they don't know if their concerns are being heard or followed through on. And I think the second thing is that, you know, there could be a perception that maybe I'm just not listening to them, or I'm not taking them seriously. So for me, that's the hardest thing is, you know, not to be able to tell people exactly what it is I'm doing out in the community. And that has nothing to do with wanting to sort of toot my own horn. It's just a matter of, you know, I'm just not able to give that information out. It's tough.
It's hard to be last, by the way, because you all say really great things, okay? But I'm just going to say it this way. I think I've learned along the way that not everybody is going to see things or make decisions in the same way that I would. So when I'm out there making decisions that are going to impact 5,000 children and their families and our community and our town, then I can't just think the way Maria thinks. I need to be able to see what the needs of everybody else is, and then come to the best decision possible. And then I can't take it personally if it doesn't come out exactly the way that I would have thought that it should. So I think that I've learned that along the way, and I've had many other leadership roles. For example, I was on the board of a credit union for many years, and we went through a lot of changes, and it was in a very different community from Chelmsford, but it is serving people in that community. So along the way, I had to learn that really, truly, the first thing is know the lay of the land, know who your folks are that you are serving and what their needs are, and then take it from there, and don't take things truly personally. It's for the good of the organization or the community. And that's what I've got to think as a leader. That's about it.
Yeah, Maria, thank you. And Jen, thank you for your inputs. And just to build on to what you've just said, Maria, as somebody who hosts conversations in our community about issues that are affecting different demographics and also conversations with local government, I completely agree. It's very critical to listen and lift those voices out so that our leaders can understand what, the problems before they come up with solutions. Because when we come up with solutions or assume solutions, then they don't reflect our community needs, and then we fall in trouble. We become a community that has a lot of fantastic legislation that is useless or is not applicable. But yeah, just so with that said, with all of you have shared, some of the things you wish you would have known, which could have led to potential challenges, rising up in your leadership position. So questions are, what are some challenges, maybe one or two, that you have faced while trying to, establish yourself in this position? And it's a twofold question. The second part of it is, what advice do you have for another woman who is aspiring to be in a political, in a leadership position in whatever areas that areas that you represent? This time I'll shuffle it around. I'll start with Maria.
I knew Vivian was going to do this to me. Okay, so that board that I served on for so many years, I was actually at many times in that 15-year period, the only woman on the board. And then I became its first woman chair of the board for several years. And I've reflected back on those times many times in my life, and thinking about whether the fact that I was a woman in that role at that time. By the way, it started off as a Portuguese-based credit union, which then became a community-based credit union because the need for the immigrant role was not there that much anymore. So the organization evolved, and you have to look at the culture and everything else. So was that important that I was a woman? I think it made a difference to some people. It really actually did. There are many times that I've been approached where other women remember that I was there at that time in that role, and it made a difference to them. And even employees in the organization have said the same thing to me. Now, in my current role, the fact that I am a woman on a school committee, what does that do for me? I look at myself more like a parent more than anything else, because I think the role, parenting is really not just for women, it's for the family that's taking care of the child. So I look at myself more like that, okay? So the challenge of actually being a female or woman in particular leadership roles, I think has changed over time. I think I don't see myself as really that anymore. I see myself as a person in the community that's is in this place, has been elected to this position, and is making decisions, but with my own full experience behind me, certainly, and being a woman is part of it. But it's not like unusual anymore, or it's not something that makes me unique, although I think it makes me part of that diversity that we all look for in our leadership, our leaders.
Thank you so much. You mentioned diversity, so I'll transition to our DEI person. Kali, you're next. You're muted, Carly. You're still muted.
I unmuted. So in my role for DEIC, I work with a very diverse group of people. So as a woman, being a woman, there are really no challenges in my committee work. But I can say that in my professional career, throughout my career, I've been in sales, I've been in high tech, and for a good many years, early in my career, I was one of the few women who were in sales leadership. And I was always attending meetings surrounded by men. And the attitude, the behavior, was a lot of misogyny. And it was a lot that you had to close your eyes to, keep silent about, because we didn't have the support that we see now today. The things that went on when I was a young manager in sales couldn't exist in today's workplace. There's no room for it because there's strength in numbers. And I'm very happy to see that change. I mean, I knew what was happening when I was younger was wrong, but there weren't a lot of people who would champion that with me and say, yeah, we're going to make this change. And I'd say over the past 10 years, I've seen a tremendous shift in how men interact with women. There are more women who are in leadership positions. And I'm very grateful to say that I work for probably one of the best corporations in the world, Microsoft. And we're all about diversity and inclusion to an extent where we are having, in my group, in my vertical, every week we're featuring for Women's History Month, featuring a female executive where we tell our stories. Everyone gets up and tells a story about how they came through in their career as a woman, the good experiences, the bad experiences, and it's a learning moment. And I am just so grateful to work for a company that supports women, that elevates women, gives them a platform, believes that they deserve to be on that platform. And so many of our executives in the company are, in fact, women. So that's been my experience. It's been weird in the beginning, and it's gotten better and better over time.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We're going to do Pat, Jen, and then Eileen.
Okay, thanks. I mean, as far as the challenges that I think I face probably mostly being on the select board is when an issue comes up, having the courage to vote and promote what's right for the town versus what's popular for the town. And I think just as we see in the state level and the national level and even the international level, so many issues are just polarized and people look at them from their own internal perspective and with an emotional perspective without really considering the practical and the realistic perspectives. So I think sometimes it's very hard to get people to understand that there's more than one way to look at something, even though everybody seems to have their blinders on when they're looking at certain issues and can't understand why the way they look at it is not the only way and the right way that it should fall out. I mean, as far as advice that I would give women that might want to run for any office, is don't give up. When I was first elected in the town of Chelmsford, there had been 2 women on the select board before me in over 350 years of this town. Before I decided to run, I called probably 70, 80 people in town, people that had been on the board before and people that I knew had ideas about how the town should be run and maybe could give suggestions on how I could run a campaign. And I remember this one person that I called, and he said, it was a man, of course, you'll be able to tell that from his comment. He said to me, wow, a woman on the Board of Selectmen, we tried that once, it didn't work. That was what he said. And I just couldn't believe that somebody would be so Neanderthal to say that. But since that time, we almost always now have one and sometimes two. In fact, at one point we had 3 women out of 5 on the select board. So some change is incremental, and then sometimes you get to that point, I think where, Maria maybe said it, or Carly, that all of a sudden things do change dramatically. And when that happens, we just have to keep going, keep, moving forward, and like I say, not give up, and, keep trying. And, even if you don't make it the first time, there's always a second and third and fourth time. So that would be my advice.
Well said. Thank you, Pat. Jen and Eileen.
So my greatest challenge when I came on board as community services coordinator was figuring out the whole municipal government and how it works, and working within municipal government. It's actually pretty rare to see social workers as a department head in municipal government. Certainly they've had roles in the past, but to actually be a department head, I think is pretty novel, although it's increasing. We've seen more of it in the last few years, but they don't teach you how to be a department head in municipal government in social worker school. They teach you how to be an agency director or something like that. But, agencies and nonprofits work very differently from municipal government. I'm almost 3 years in, and I'm not going to say that I have it all figured out. Particularly the budget process is just terrifying to me, and I don't know exactly how it works all of the time. And I truly believe I have an allergy to spreadsheets. And so when I take on an intern, I make sure that they are proficient in Excel so that I don't have to do it. So, that's one of the perks of being a leader, is that you can enlist help in the areas where you're weaker in, right? Because we're not going to be strong in every single area. So, but my piece of advice to women who are wanting to be leaders in my field of social work, but really in any field, because my field of social work is actually dominated by women. So I kind of come at it from the opposite perspective, where I really look to encourage men to get into the field of social work. But as far as encouraging women to get into leadership in any field, my advice is to it's not too late. So very much, Eileen and I actually have a lot in common. I worked in healthcare for 20 years before I became a social worker. I raised 3 kids during that time. It was a very convenient field for me to work in, where I was able to work nights and then be home with my family during the day. I worked nights for 13 years and was pretty miserable during that time, but I was home with my kids. Probably sometimes they wished I wasn't. But by the time they were of age to start going off to college, and I was not feeling very fulfilled with my career and thinking, am I really going to do this for the rest of my life? At 44 years old, I went back to school to finish my bachelor's degree. And then I finished that and I went right into my master's degree. And now I'm turning 50 in a few weeks and I'm working towards my PhD. So it's never, ever too late. Whatever you're doing in this moment doesn't have to be what you do for the rest of your life. And whether you're 40 or 50 or 60 and you want to do something else, do it.
What an inspiration. Eileen?
Yes, Jen, yes. We come over for coffee. We need to talk about that, because yes.
Can I join the party?
Everyone is invited always. For challenges as a small business owner, I mean, COVID. I can't even, as we were Artisans Exchange, and I lost the entire business. I felt, no one teaches you that. Even if I had gone to business school, I don't think that there's a course in that. If you feel very alone, we felt very, no one would help. There was no help. No one knew what to do. It's uncharted waters. We were very alone. I lost business partners, lost friends, lost everything. So it was very, very scary, very scary. But we're still dealing with it. Some people are saying, gee, COVID's done. Guys, it's fine. People are coming back out. Well, for small businesses, not so much. The recovery from this is, just because our doors are still open doesn't mean they're going to be open in 3 months. That doesn't mean that. It's still very, very real for small businesses like mine. So this challenge, it's a challenge that keeps me up every night as a solopreneur. I own this business by myself now, and it's very real. I have people that I support. I have a full staff. And by the way, I still have those 3 little babies in my house, and my husband and all the things. So COVID is still very real, still very threatening in this house. But we're all healthy, so thank God for that. Advice for other business owners: don't take no for an answer. I've been told, no, Eileen, no, that won't work. You can't do that. That will never work. And I just say, watch me. So that's what I say to that. And I think it's important. And I drive my parents crazy with it. My husband, as soon as I say, oh, I have an idea. Oh my gosh, the look on his face. I'm so sorry. But don't tell me I can't do something if I'm passionate about it. So if you're passionate about it, go for it. Jen, yes, you're passionate about it, go for it. Don't tell me I can't do it. So if you're passionate about it, you can do it. And ask for help.
Thank you, ladies, again for sharing, your amazing stories. I mean, I said yesterday, I had a conversation with Eileen about small businesses and how they intersect with local government, with relief, the funding that comes from the state, and the gaps in supporting small businesses or micro businesses, like she refers us to. And one of the things I do every single day is I host a TV show, and not just hosting it, I'm into outreach. And one of the areas that I have focused on is the small or local businesses, because they are the engine of our communities. When we have kids, high schoolers who need summer jobs, who do they go to? Our small businesses. And yet oftentimes we don't look at them that way. So this is where we center community. If we start looking at this small businesses are part of our community, then we find solutions to some of the pain that they're going through and support them. So that is something we can all do in our respective roles. But just to build onto that, we're coming toward the end. We have a few minutes to go. So I wanted to have one round where I ask each of you, from all that you have shared, what is the one bold move you have ever made as a leader in your area, in your respective business or leadership position? I will start with Eileen, then go to Jen and Maria, Pat, and then Kali. I promised you I would be good. So be you. So there are many. I am pretty now in my later this part of my life, I am pretty bold. I would have to say the very first big event that we ran, Art on the Brook, in the fall of before COVID, we ran a huge vendor event. We had about 50 different local artisans in the parking lots behind our building. We had food, we had music, we had live entertainment. That scared the living daylights out of me running that event. I was so scared. I had my 2 partners with me from the Artisans Exchange. Come on, Eileen, we can do it. Really? Do you know it? Really? It was a 2-day event and we killed it. It was amazing. And this year we're going to do our 3rd sort of annual. We didn't do it during COVID. This year will be the 3rd one. We're also doing one in May 7th, just if you want to come. But that was probably the biggest, scariest thing that I've done as a business leader. And it was for our community. The community loved it. And that's the only reason why we still do it.
But man, did that scare me.
Jen, and then Maria.
I'd have to say that I think the boldest move I've made in my professional career to this date is deciding to go for a PhD. I don't need it for this job that I'm in. And I could have very contently sat here from now until retirement with my master's degree, doing my work here in Chelmsford and be very happy. But the reality is that there are other things that I want to do in addition to being here in Chelmsford. So my research work that I'm doing for my PhD is vastly different from what I do here in my professional role with Chelmsford. And I'll just reassure folks that even when my PhD is complete, I have no plans to leave Chelmsford. I think one of the things I realized is that it can be a both and, it doesn't have to be an either or. And in order to pursue those other goals that I have, in addition to being here, I decided that I would take the risk and go for the PhD. And much in the same way that Eileen described her experience as being terrifying, it's been particularly terrifying for me. I'm the oldest member in my cohort by more than 10 years. So I also have been a master's level social worker for less time than anyone else in the cohort. And so there's really a lot of barriers that I've been trying to bust down in order to be in this program and be successful in it. And so it's terrifying, but it's bold, and I'm so glad that I've done it.
I'm thinking if there's one particular thing that was terrifying, because I think I've felt a couple along the way. So first, I think being the first generation to go to college was all on my own decision. Then English, well, we immigrated here, so this is my second language and my second culture. But going to that, and then finding myself in law school. So I'm the first generation college and the first generation law school. And that year was pretty terrifying. But I'm at BC thinking, you know what? I can do this. And you end up at the end of the year more sure of yourself and more certain of yourself if you can make it through that fire. And Jen is definitely making it through the fire, so she's gonna definitely be there. But that was right in my 20s. Then I think my next most terrifying thing was actually in my career. I had built a practice in conveyancing law and so on for the span of about 7 years. And at the end of that, I decided to change totally to becoming focused only on immigration. And I also changed partnerships. And so I've been a small business owner for many, many years as an attorney, practicing with a partner now for over 25 years in this partnership. And that was a very frightening thing. I remember this. But you go the next step, you learn a whole new area, and you just keep on moving. And then finally, I think the next most frightening thing was having twins at the age of 41. And, but that has also, in all of those three things, if I think about it, they're also the most fulfilling in life. So although they're the most scary, they're the most fulfilling. Of course, I have many other things that are fulfilling, and including being a member of the school committee, which I really enjoyed. But the most frightening moment in that was making the decision whether to go remote, hybrid, or have school at all. No, during COVID. I think that was a very frightening decision too in the process.
Thank you, Maria. Pat, and then lastly, Kelly.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what I would consider a bold move, and I guess I'll kind of go with the same theme that we've been hearing, having to do with education. When I was going to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and it just so happened that the Air Force was just opening up their ROTC program to women that year that I started college. So I thought, wow, I won't have to really worry about what I want to do because they'll tell me what I'm going to do. So I went through the ROTC program, graduated from that. Kind of proud of the fact that I was the sixth woman in the country to get a commission through ROTC. Back in 1974, they taught me how to program computers. So that was, my career was in technology almost from that point forward. After I got out of the Air Force, I worked for a couple private companies, and then I said, well, I can do this on my own, and I did. I got a master's degree when I got out of the Air Force in Oklahoma, and then I moved back here, and knowing a few people around town, I was able to get some clients, and so that worked out. And then I guess the next bold move would have been, running for the Board of Selectmen. I didn't have high expectations, but I thought, this is something I have to try. So it has to do with education and service.
Callie, thank you, Pat.
Yeah, these stories are amazing. Every single one of them. I think working in the private sector, working for high tech, it's very different from the work that everyone on the panel has been doing. It's very self-serving, and it's really just about being successful, growing with the company. And I think in terms of the most frightening thing I've done in that regard, because again, with the DEIC, there's really been nothing that I can draw on to say that this was the boldest or most frightening thing I've done with the DEIC. But in my professional career in high tech, you have to fight your battles. And being in an environment as a woman that was, just so misogynistic, I recall about 15 years ago, sitting in a management meeting, and there were several very inappropriate remarks made to me during that discussion where I was advocating for my team by a gentleman in the room, and referring to me as mommying my team and things like that. And I just got tired of it. I just, I decided, what, I'm willing to give up my job, my career here, and walk out. I was just done with it. And so I pushed back hard, but respectfully. But then what I did, because I didn't want to just leave it at, we've had this debate, I needed to get some closure on it. And so I talked to some female colleagues, and we all, we all shared some similar stories. And what we did was we went to the VP of HR for the corporation, and we said, we have some concerns. We went as a group and said, we have some concerns. We do not feel that we're being treated equally. We don't feel that we're being treated appropriately. And we'd like to get your advice on how we can deal with that, because there were no programs, there were no organizations within the company to address that sort of thing. And what she did was she formed a group of female leadership within the organization. We called ourselves the Powerpuff Girls. And we would meet and talk about things that we've encountered in our career. And that was where the shift started for the organization, because the VP of HR, I remember her saying that she was standing at one, we're in this tower building. She's looking out over the parking lot with the CEO of the company, and he's watching these women who are running into the building, and it's probably 8:30 in the morning. And he points down at those women and he said, they're not committed. They're showing up at 8:30. I was here at 6:30. Why are they just rolling in at 8:30? And she said to him, because they probably had to get the kids to school, pick up the, dry cleaning, feed everybody. The husband has already left for work because she took care of his breakfast. And she really let him have it because she'd been hearing these stories from us. And she heard firsthand how male leadership viewed women in the company. So that started the change. But when we did it, I was afraid I was going to lose my job. It was a great company, but I'm glad I did it. And it taught me to always advocate for myself and others. Don't be afraid, just do it and see where the chips fall. But, as many others have done it, it's really helped, and I think that that's what everyone needs to do, is to look out for one another as women and look out for yourselves, advocate for yourself.
Thank you, Callie. What a phenomenal group of women panelists and women leaders in Chelmsford. I am just awed by your experiences. I know I wish we had more time. We don't have more time. I just wanted first to pitch in my one bold move because, you know, the one that scared the heck out of me was me announcing that I'm running for office for the 14th Middlesex District. English is my third language. So I was, you know, conscious about that. And just basically, it was scary. But, you know, like you've all said, you just go for it and make conversations, bring community into legislation, and not look at running for office as an elite thing, but more look at it as a community thing where we're just looking out for one another as neighbors, as friends, as businesses, as colleagues. And that way we make it fun, we make it enjoyable, we made it collaborative, and we make things happen. So it's been an honor just listening to you and being with you today. Thank you so much for honoring us with your experiences. And with that, I want to pass it over to Maura. And yeah, I'm just so excited and blown away by all of you. Thank you for your service to the town of Chelmsford.
Thank you so much. Let's hope that this is a conversation that we keep having with this remarkable group of people. I'm going to be writing up some of the things that Vivian has learned and share them on social media. And then I have the recording of this. So you will hear from us again, and we'll be able to share your wonderful stories with a broader audience. So thank you again so much for making the time to do this. And Vivian, you all want a part on Vivian's shows now, don't you? You've got her email, you know where to find her, because she does a wonderful job with that. So thank you all very much. And if anyone wants to stay and chat, you're welcome to, but you know, I'll leave the room open until everyone's had a chance to roll. And thank you again so much for making yourselves available tonight and for all the work you do.